Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rewind and Reflect, where we believe in the universal truth that nothing happens by mistake or coincidence. And we are here to share our life story about that with you. My name is Deb Miller.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Doyle. Nice to see you, Deb.
Nice to see you. I'm back in the Northeast in Connecticut and down in Niantic, and it's been a blissful weather change for me from going in the 100-degree humidity to nice and cool.
Feeling like fall.
Yeah, I know it does, but it's so lovely. It's so lovely. I love it.
I know. We were just talking before we turned before we started to hit the record button. I think I'm the only person on the planet that would love to be in 100 degrees with 95, 98% humidity. I freaking love it.
Yeah,
All my aches and pains go away, but I do feel like I'm happy that you're closer to me and that we're actually going to see each other in person pretty soon.
I
It's been a
know.
while, so I love that. Uh, so I'm sure everybody knows this by now, but your significant other and I grew up together also. So we're gonna get together and I'm gonna introduce my husband to you guys, and he I was always saying to me like, what were you like? Da, 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 da. So now I'm so excited for him to meet you guys, and I told him, I said, can pepper them with questions about what I was like, because these are my people. Like they
Yeah.
know who I am from the very beginning. Your significant other and I,
First
oh
grade.
my goodness,
Was it
go
first
back
grade?
like I don't remember kindergarten. So we had like this little 5-room schoolhouse near us, which we would go to the bigger elementary school for kindergarten and then go back there for first grade. So I
Mhm.
do remember that we were in first grade together, but I think we were probably kindergarten together and just didn't know where each other lived until um, first grade.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about
We
right.
probably could have gone to preschool together too, because I went to Pine Grove Preschool.
I think he was I don't think he moved to Avon until I think they were in New Britain for a while. I don't know, but
Oh, okay.
we can ask all the questions and
Oh my
we
God,
go,
all the questions. And then like if we get together and your brothers are there, good Lord, we can talk about Boobgate.
I know about food gate.
Even though your brother doesn't remember it,
And I don't
which
know
is
if
so
Sean would be too
disappointing, but
excited.
pretty
Yeah,
accurate.
so funny.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. So,
So,
I'm thinking about, my husband Sean meeting you guys and you start and I think for me anyway, I got to a certain age where you start to think about, like your life and the legacy that you leave behind, or what do you want to leave in the world, or what kind of mark you want to leave in the world. And lots of times when I'm taking yoga, my teacher says, things like, what are you a stand for? What are your core values? Like, what do you stand in your greatness, and or how do you stand in your greatness, and things like that, which, kind of basically to me interprets like, what is the meaning of your life? Like, how do you find meaning? What is the meaning that you sort of bring to other people? And bringing it back around with Sean, meeting you guys, to me it's like I'm showing him the value of these relationships that I have had, although we went this way, now we're back this way, but like, you guys are my people. Like, this is where I come from, and this
mm,
is the where I have chosen, after I think a long stretch of being lost. I'm going to say that I was lost for a long stretch and didn't understand the true value and the meaning of these types of relationships. Um, but I think that that brings an element of the meaning of my life is, I learned over time, right, to value these things, not push them away, because they do, you know, they are who I am.
Hmm.
This is how I became me based on these relationships. And I think, building meaningful relationships is part of, the meaning of my life,
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah. I
know.
remember last week we talked about building a found how a strong foundation is so important
Hmm.
to kind of build your life on. And the relationships that you make and friendships that you make that early on really are your foundation. And sometimes they're not sturdy foundations. Those years of elementary, middle school, high school, they're not pleasant for everybody. And they can be create very shaky foundations. Um, I think we were just lucky enough to find each other and have our person, where
Right.
a lot of people did, and especially, and I know we've said this before, and so many people say it, like this day and age with social media and all of that, man, I don't know how people grow really sturdy foundations with that because you're just in constant, I feel like these kids are in constant competition socially with each other.
Right.
And
Right.
you really don't, you and I, and growing up in our age, we had like the one on we were constantly that one-on-one with each other,
Hmm.
or with each other on weekends, and we were together, so we were each other's foundation. But so many people now, kids growing up, there's so many more people in their circle because of social media. You
Hmm.
can just get one little negative feedback or comment can just cut you at the knees, and it's
But
just
here's the other thing with that too is it's not real. It's not tactile. There's not a It's weird. It's a friendship that's very fragmented and disconnected. Do you know
hmm.
what I mean? So I remember, you and I being just this powerhouse duo. But then when we went outside, right, of that, I have always said to my husband Sean, he grew up more in a city, like he didn't drive out into the cornfield with a keg of beer, right? I have always said to him, I said, you don't understand when we were growing up and where we grew up. I knew these people since kindergarten and fifth grade, and we always took care of each other. Like nobody was left there, right? Nobody was put in a compromised position. Nobody was, and maybe it was because there's no social media. Like, there was no um opportunity for like a picture to go around on people's phones or anything like that. And I felt very taken care of, very much everybody had each other's backs. And I
Yeah.
think that, that is really, a strong part of building a meaningful life too. You know what I mean? Is when you take care of other people, when you have that community
Yeah,
value.
the community
Thanks,
value.
Reed.
Well, I'm just laughing because speaking of being in the cornfield, and again, I think I've brought this up before. I just have to change my computer a little bit. Your brother, who I
Oh my
knew,
God, I knew you were going to tell this story.
yeah, never said 3 words to me in
You never
all
said three
year.
words to anybody, by the way. It
Yeah,
wasn't
he
just you, it
was
was
very,
everybody.
very quiet, very shy. He was 3 years older than us, 4 years older than us, or whatever.
Yeah, he was never in high, so he was 4 years older than us in school, but
All
three
right,
years
so I
quite a
don't know
while.
how we ended up at the same cornfield party, but we were at a party in a cornfield, and the only words your brother ever said to me was, "Where the hell is my sister?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I didn't know. You were off somewhere with somebody doing something, and I was just like, "I honestly don't know." You know,
And you were like shitting your pants because
I was.
he was a little intimidating.
Well, plus the fact that he was actually like concerned and looking for you, like he
Yeah.
never paid any attention to us.
Yeah,
growing
no.
up. And then all of a sudden we're somewhere we're
Yeah.
probably not supposed to be. And he's
Yeah.
wanting to know where you are, and I don't know. And I was scared because he never spoke to me before. And now he's
Yeah.
speaking to me and he's like upset. And so, but that is how we grew up, And the other thing I want to touch on is, you know, before phones and social media and all of that, we trusted each other. We
Mm-hmm.
trusted each other. There
Mm-hmm.
was no thought of like, I think I would have had a huge, huge, huge issue trusting people, friends and boyfriends and all of that back then with social media or the connectivity of the phone, because
Mm-hmm.
the only way that you were gonna maybe, turn on me was through a written note to somebody, like,
Right.
so mad at Deb right now or whatever. And but
And when that note was burned and or thrown
yeah,
away, it truly 100% disappeared.
disappeared, right? And
Yeah.
so if I, had a friend that I didn't know what she was texting to somebody else. Like, are we truly friends, or are you,
I know.
what are you doing? Like,
I know it's
and
hard.
there's so much manipulation going on. Anyways, we're kind of off topic because what we really did want to talk about today is,
Yeah.
um, finding our why in life, finding our purpose,
Mm-hmm.
finding, because like
Yeah.
you're saying, you get to this age in your life and you really want to look back and be like, okay, how did I make this world a better place? Or what
Right.
is my legacy going to be? What do I want my children to say about me when I'm gone? I how did I find my meaning for being here on earth? And it is not something that I personally even thought about
Well,
until,
yeah, me either, because yeah, yes, because I think I did. Here's the thing with me is I think I was trying to find that. I didn't know what it was. And what I did over the course of time is like wrap it up with like work.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And it wasn't until I really took a step back and sort of practiced some self-compassion and kind of looked at, you know, what my core values was. Like I could see that I was trying to do that, but it was wrapped up in the wrong wrapping paper and packaging.
But I think that we all, you go to college or you get out of school and you start working right away. And for all of those years, our main goal was survival. We had to make money to put a roof over our head, to send our kids to school, or just to make sure that they were properly financially taken care of. And then all of a sudden it's like, so there's no time to think of like, what do I want my legacy to be? All
Right.
I thought about was, how am I going to pay these bills? Paycheck to paycheck, and keeping my sobriety, my recovery intact, and making sure my son was safe and happy and taken care of.
Yeah, but you were unknowingly leaving a legacy. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
It's like we were so caught up in that dated, like, building and grinding and but what you actually left was this amazing, probably a work ethic.
Mm.
Your son saw how much you loved him and wanted to protect him from, the evils of the world, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess because my band-aid was ripped off very early in life. What I mean by that is, and I'll speak for myself, I always wanted to I had this way that I thought my life would would look, okay? And it was very similar to how my parents were and how my husband's parents were, successful business people, you know, two houses, a summer home and a year-round home, and vacations, and you turn 16, you get a car. It sounds very materialistic and spoiled stuff, but it was that's how I grew up, and
That's all
that's
we knew.
that
That's all
I
we knew. We never
that's
asked our
right.
parents, so what's the meaning of life?
Right,
Right? I
right,
mean,
right. So at 34, when I ended up going into rehab, and for those years prior to that, from 30 to 34, 35, when I started getting arrested and my covers were pulled, and it was like, this is all smoke and mirrors. This beautiful
hmm
home that we live in, and this, really perfect looking life that I have is all smoke and mirrors. And I think a lot of people live in smoke and mirrors for a long time. But I was exposed early on, like, this is not real. My husband is not nice. I'm addicted to drugs. We are getting our cars repossessed. The house is foreclosing. It is a house of cards that's falling apart. So, and I'm an addict. Okay. And so at that point, I had to either say, I can continue to shovel the shit over this and make it look pretty, or I can just throw my hands up and say, yeah, this is my life is a mess. I'm a mess. I need help. And then live authentically from that day on. Now, because I was able to do that, and it was very painful, trust me, nobody wants to be exposed like that.
right.
Everybody, you know, but I just decided to live in that glass house from that point on, and just say, I can't pretend to be something that I'm not. It's just too hard and too painful. So then I started working on figuring out who I was and what I wanted to bring into this world. And it didn't happen right away, because I really just needed to figure out how to survive and pay the
hmm
bills and do the thing.
hmm
And then, but then where I am today, I look at it and I'm like, okay, what have all my struggles been? You know, I There's been plenty, okay, from abusive marriage to addiction to a child with cancer, to all of the things. So that has been my life. So my purpose, for me anyways, is to not only to be transparent about that, but to make others feel comfortable in living their truth. And
Correct.
guess what? If your marriage is very different on the inside than it looks on the outside, the fact that you're pretending that it's one thing is way more painful than saying, yeah, we have struggles. This is not, perfect. But
Yeah.
and then that next woman or the next man or whatever can feel comfortable coming out and saying, yeah, this is my truth. Because we're not supposed to live in a world where things look perfect. All we're doing is making other people feel bad about their life when we pretend that our life is so perfect.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so the truth be told, before we got, because I have struggled with, I even struggle with the question, like, who are you? Without, trying to describe that to somebody without using labels like I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a working person, an instructor, all these things, like, and I struggle with trying to find the answer to that question, which I think ties into, basically, the legacy, what is the meaning? Why am I here? What am I leaving behind? Am I leaving the world a better place than I found it? Or at least my world, maybe not necessarily the global world, but um and so I've looked things up a lot, and I've read a lot about it, and some of it, there's a lot of answers or truth in practicing self-reflection, which we do every day. Like, how can I grow from these things that didn't quite go as well as I wanted them to? You know what I mean? So I think you're creating an authentic existence and a meaning to your life when you self-reflect and say, not why did this happen to me, or why is this happening, or it's more like, what can I learn from this? Right? So you're bringing meaning to everything that happens,
Right.
right? And you also practice some self-compassion. There's a large um component of when you find meaning for your life is to have self-compassion, where I'm not sitting here saying, oh my God, I wasted so much time, and oh my God, I can't believe I did that, and oh my God, I can't believe I did that. You're allowing yourself the grace to say, like, listen, I made my life did not go as planned, but this
Mhm.
is what I did to bring it into a space and a place that aligns with my values and who I am. The other thing is, what are your values? Like, what are intrinsically the motivators for you to live an authentic life?
Mhm.
It could be honesty and loyalty. It could be, a hard work ethic. It could be self-compassion every day. All these things, and so, I think it wasn't until I was able to forgive myself for living a life that didn't authentic. I knew deep down, and we talked about intuition. I knew deep down that this was not an authentically, like, fulfilling, or it didn't feel right to me. And I kept driving by it until I couldn't drive by it anymore. You call it the house of cards, I call it driving by authentically who you are. I knew what I wanted to feel. I knew what I wanted to um leave, how I wanted to leave my mark. But it
Mhm.
was so clouded with anger and resentment, like I could not leave it. I couldn't keep let it I could not um land it
Yeah.
until I reflected back, and until I forgave myself, and until I made that decision to start new
Right.
with a different from a different place of core of who I was. And the same thing with you, the same thing with me, as you described, is I kept thinking, like, well, it's supposed to look like this, it's supposed to be like this, and I just kept feeling like this is not right. This doesn't feel right. And I just kept trying to leave this mark and leave this legacy and have this impact, right?
Mhm.
In a completely wrong package,
Yeah. Right. Completely wrong package. I know.
you know?
I totally.
And it wasn't until I did that. And then, the other thing I find that helps me stay true to who I am, and find and have meaning in my life is gratitude and joy, and finding, you know, meanings in, like, the very teeny tiny things in life, like a fresh cup of coffee. Or, I got off track for a little while, and then working with my therapist, she's like, how are those gratitude statements coming? I'm like, well, I kind of fell off. So every day, when I come up to my office, I flip a new page and I write my to-do list, and down at the very bottom of that day's page, I will write 1 to 3 gratitude statements, depending on, how I'm feeling. I have to, even if I am in, like, the crankiest, like, most acidic mood of, I have to write something,
Yeah.
right? And it usually, 9 out of 10 times it turns me around. So it's little things, like, I am grateful that I hit the snooze bar on my alarm and slept for an extra 20 minutes today. I'm grateful that the sun came, things like that. And it reminds you to find meaning in the small things, which helps in defining the meaning of your life. Because I know for me, years ago, I used to wait for these big, ginormous, explosive things to say, like, that is the meaning, right? And really, in reality, it's the teeny tiny things that you find meaning in that add meaning and value to your own life.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But it's really hard when you're going through something or you're in something to see any kind of goodness in anything,
Mm-hmm.
or purpose or reasoning. It's like, you know, I didn't know when Hunter was sick. I didn't know if he in my heart of hearts, I knew that he was going to survive, but I also did not know what this was going to do to him physically, emotionally, any of that. And it ended up being really bad with regards to that. Um, but and if you were to say to me like you got to look for the purpose in this or the lesson in this or the good in this, I was not ready to hear that, nor was I able to see any of that. And however, when I look back at it and I look back at all of the things that happened during that time and the people that showed up and the people that didn't show up, and that was okay too, because it's like I didn't stop loving those people, but I came to understand what they were capable of and what they weren't
Mm-hmm.
capable of. They loved me and they wanted to be there for me, but they just had no idea how to do that. And that was okay, So, and I needed to work through that as well, like dealing with that. But at the end of it, I see so many miracles and beautiful things that happened during
Mm-hmm.
those darkest times. And so that all of that led up to what I feel my purpose on this earth is. And it's when you go through really, really, really hard times, it is your job, we'll say, to help those others that are going through it. Because I
Mm-hmm.
had people on the other side who were like, my child just went through this, and this is what you can expect is going to happen. And so now, whether it's in recovery, whether it's working with women, infertility, women who are, in an abusive relationship or whatever that may look like, or parents that have sick children, I am now responsible for reaching out my hand and helping somebody else get through that. That is my purpose, sharing my story to give
Mm-hmm.
hope and relief to somebody, whoever is going through that. And your purpose I mean, you know your purpose, but I see you as, you did go through your life wanting it to look a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
you were very much protective of that, of what that looked like. You were not going to let anybody see how you were struggling or that, what
Oh,
was
for
really going
sure.
on behind closed doors. No way. You were a businesswoman. You had a really handsome, kind husband. You wanted your marriage to be good. You had these amazing children and a dog and all the stuff, and the house and the dog and all the stuff. And it wasn't until you were not going to let anybody close enough to you to see what was really going on. And so that's why you had that big barrier. But when I saw you that day in Walmart and you were going through a divorce, it was like that was just
Yeah,
dead.
it
So
was.
and so the other thing you were challenged with was an eating disorder and an exercise disorder that you have been able to harness and create
Yes.
something really positive and really good. And that's sharing with other people how to do it right. Okay. So now you've got this, like, look, I've been through the divorce. I've been through the diseases. I've been through the single life. losing a job, losing this, losing that, and now I am building my life back together. And it's
Mm-hmm.
picture perfect. It never will be. But to that woman who's in the middle of it going, I am so unhappy in my life right now.
Yeah.
I can't let anybody see that. You are going to be that pivotal point in somebody's life where they're going to go, oh, there is a freedom on the other side of this, and maybe Sue can help me through that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. That's you've said it perfectly.
That's how I see it anyways. We don't go through
Yeah.
tough times just so we can
Yeah.
hold it in. We have to share
Right.
our
Right. And you're
solution
doing,
with
and I think
others.
those who choose to hold it in are doing the world a disservice
Absolutely.
because, you know, it goes back to, just you can't do life alone. You can't find meaning alone. You can't,
And
you know,
all our kids are learning from us if we do that is to
correct.
shove it in, shove it down, live in misery as long as things look good on the outside. That's all that matters. And that is so unhealthy. And we do not want to teach our children to be unhappy in an unhealthy situation. It's
Yeah.
okay if you fail at something. It's okay. That's
Yeah.
you're
I
supposed to.
think I think what the both of us have done too is created an environment for our families, our children to be authentically, to not, we didn't give them a bullshit story to buy into.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? We gave them permission to be who they are, succeed, fail, get up, fall down, you know, and understand that it's all of it is normal. All
right.
of it is welcomed because
We
that's what shapes who you are, where you're going, and where and what type of legacy and meaning you want to live by and leave.
yeah, and
Like if
that
I could leave a legacy for my children that is just, basically write your own story
right. I was just gonna say,
and give yourself permission to burn the book and rewrite it.
oh my God, Sue, I was literally just gonna say it's okay to rewrite your story over and over again.
Yeah,
It is because
yeah.
you think back to like when you were first married, you were like, this is gonna be my life. Like, this is my life. Like, we're gonna grow
Yeah.
old together. We're gonna, grandkids, this house, the da 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 da. I mean, how many times have you restarted your life? I've done
Oh
it
my
so
God,
many
a
times.
ton.
And
Yeah,
guess what? Every time you restart it, you've learned something from the past and you're putting it towards your future life.
correct.
It's like
Right.
it's amazing. Yes, I love that. You can write your
Yeah.
story, burn it, and then rewrite it.
But you have to, you know what I mean? In order to, do that, you have to give yourself permission to learn and grow and begin again. In yoga, the huge thing is just begin again.
Start over, yeah,
So if you lose your focus, if you're holding your breath, just begin again. From that point, just start again.
right.
And I get, and I just try to, you know, teach my kids. My dad was always one that he was so proud of our accomplishments and so proud of us, but off to the side, he would always say to us, like, are you having fun though?
Mhm.
Like, are you having fun though? And so, what I have sort of translated that to my children is, are you excited to get up in the morning? And it doesn't always have to be. And my thing is like I defined myself so much by my job and my career. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be, you found your passion. You make a living doing X, Y, and Z, but you found your passion in ABC. And that's what gets you up in the morning. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It doesn't have to be just this one avenue.
No, it's so true
And it
because
doesn't have to be multiple avenues either. It could be just something completely different.
Yeah, and I don't think I think a lot of people, if they took what gave them joy and what their purpose is and made it into a career, that might not be the best thing. I know it wouldn't have been for me.
Yes.
I really mine is very well, it was very separate, but it's not anymore. After I
Right.
wrote the book, that became a whole different thing. I'm now doing both, but I'm at a point in my life where it's okay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy being able to help other women or other people, and then but also my spiritual growth. I'm not doing anything with that regarding making a living, and that
Right.
brings me tremendous joy, like
Right.
all about it.
Right.
So I just, but then, but we also have to pay homage to the people who really do have a fantastic marriage and life, and it's not it's not smoke and mirrors. There are people out there that really have found their soulmate, their life, their love, and it is all packaged very pretty, and it is pretty on the inside and the outside. And God bless them. That
Right.
was not
Right.
my life.
Yeah, I have a friend very much like that, but I also I would say 20 years ago, I would say, oh my God, like they're so lucky. And now I see that they both made a commitment to learn and grow together.
Mhm.
And that's, I believe, what contributes to their staying power and it being beautiful on the outside and the inside. Because you need to grow and learn.
Right,
You're not at 55 or 50 or 60, you're not the same as that married person at 20 and 25, but what you did is you put these things into practice together rather than separately,
right,
or
right.
one doing work and one not doing work, or you know what I mean, and you learn about each other and you grow together rather than just saying, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, right, of
It
course.
takes work. It takes
Takes a
work.
lot of work. Yeah, you got
um and I think too, like, your core values have to align,
absolutely.
you know
Especially when
um
children are involved. I think that's the hardest when you start parenting different, or you're
yeah.
that's so I feel like if you're married and you make it through those times, like you got a shot. But if not, it's like, oh, just it's really difficult. So,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah,
hope
and I think
everybody
too, both parties have to also self-reflect in the sense that, hey, I made some decisions that brought us off the rails a little bit. Let's bring, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? One, it can't be, it has to be a mutual, even a dual effort, I should say, because sometimes, relationships, somebody gives 100 and the other person doesn't have it, and then you give 50-50, then you give 70-30 and 80-20, and it's an ever evolving equation.
for sure, it's very fluid always.
Yeah. Yeah.
With friendships, it's like I think the best friendships you can have are the ones where, you know, you understand what that other person is capable of doing and what they're not capable of
Mm-hmm.
doing, and you just accept that and take
Yeah.
the good and leave the bad kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
there's certain people that I know I can turn to when I'm in crisis, and there's certain people that I know are just not good with that. So I'm not going to pull them in and help,
Correct.
ask for help.
Yeah.
But I will after it's all said and done. They're the ones who are gonna, they'll still be there for me, but it's just they're not good in crisis. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
So it's funny, I think the answer, or my opinion, the answer to, the question that we tackled this morning is, I think the meaning of your life is an ever evolving. Um, I think it's an ever evolving definition, and it's an ever evolving thing. Um, because, if you put the true principles into play of, self-reflecting and having grace with yourself, your purpose can morph and change because you rewrite your story
Yeah,
over and over and over again.
right. And you have to grow and you have to mature and you have to see things differently.
Yeah,
The things that, what I feel is my purpose now is much different than I would have said 10 years ago,
right.
and
But not to negate the purpose you had 10 years ago. That's the thing.
no,
It's like
not
you're
at all.
not negating that, but you have morphed it into something different based on the path you took for the last
Yeah.
10
And
years.
there's God's timing is everything. There is no like every single thing in your life happens at the right moment, at the right time, at
Agreed.
a minute before. And so,
Agreed.
sometimes it'll just show
Yeah.
up when it's time.
Yeah.
And you can't force it, you can't push it because you won't be ready.
Or you
So,
won't see it.
yeah, you won't be ready to
You
see
won't
it,
even
feel
notice
it,
it.
hear
And
it.
then yeah, I agree.
It's remarkable.
I
So I hope
agree.
everybody in our audience feels that if they don't already know their purpose, that comes to them, and we all make the world a better place.
Amen. Amen. Um, well, listen, we'd love to hear from you guys. Email is rewind and reflect and is spelled out with us at gmail.com. You can leave a message. You can private message us on social media. You can leave a message on our posts. And until next time,
Oh,
love
wait, one more
you.
thing. If
Okay,
there's
sorry.
any, if no, that's okay. If there's anybody who has any fun stories about either one of us when we were growing up that we probably have forgotten or
Oh, God.
wanted to forget, we would love to hear those too.
I can think of a few people that would want to say something.
I know. I know.
I'm not going to call them out by name. Oh, good Lord. Oh, well, until
All
next
right.
time.
Until next
Love
time,
you.
namaste. Love you too. Bye.